right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMAC coming to you on a Saturday, doing a little NFL action. We have a 3-game slate here as the season winds down, and it looks like a good one. Some big contests out there, decision points all around, and surprise injury news. Greg, it's almost like we're doing NBA content.
Yeah, which we are also going to be doing together later today, you and I, at 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. So fun day. You and I hanging out, double shows together, multiple sports. Are you as excited as I am, Mac? Please tell me yes.
I think this is going to be fun. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing here on with J.K. Dobbins. Mike brought up a great point. That would be producer Mike, that he is basically free on FanDuel today. He's also $20 on the secret site. So I think I'm going to put him in my lineups here and just roll the dice for my season-long contest. So we shall see. Started off with Zach Charbonnet there. Kind of a rough one, but this will allow me to go crazy with the wide receiver. So I will deal with that later now that I've got him locked in. We've got some fun at hand here. I wanted to give everybody a chance for team free money today. So I got it out there in the DK lobby. That's username EMAC. It is there for the 3-game slate and all 3 showdown slates. Come on. Take my money. It'll be fun. All right, Greg, what is your biggest surprise here, and why is it James Cook being active despite just signing a 2-year extension and being injured last week with no Michael Carter coming over the horizon? There is no cavalry to save him. It looks like it's going to be him and Benson today.
James Conner, not James Cook, by the way. Just so there's
that didn't take long, and I'm going to call him the San Diego Superchargers just at least once. Scuba, that one's for you. I hope you're watching.
Yeah, it's probably got to be James Conner for me, and I don't know what his workload is going to end up looking like today because, like you said, this is a game that on paper doesn't matter to the Cardinals, at least not for this season. Now, they obviously have a chance to play spoiler for a divisional rival where they're playing the Los Angeles Rams. And if the Rams win, they don't clinch the division, but they come very, very close to clinching the division. So with that being in mind, Arizona has at least some, integrity to play for us. By the way, Mac, your camera turned off. I don't know if that was intentional. So they have some sort of morale to be playing for. But with that said, why risk anything for the future with James Conner? Like you mentioned, EMAC just signed a contract extension. So I was very sure that he wasn't going to end up playing. And when Lofty and I were doing a sim show yesterday, which we broke it up by doing the Saturday and the Sunday slate, yeah, we had Michael Carter showing up in just about everything. He looked like the best value play on the slate by a mile because we were assuming he was going to start at a near min price at the running back position. But now James Conner's in. And the bigger question now becomes, do we even want to be playing all that much for him? Because even though he's in, does he get a full workload with it being a short week? So, yeah, I did not expect him to play at all.
Yeah, it seemed like a surprise. And I kind of dug into that a little bit this morning, trying to figure out, does he have some other contract incentives? The answer is no. Does he have any milestones he's close to? No. He's at a career high rushing yards. 10 more gets him to 1,100. He's at a career high 1,500 even scrimmage yards, and he can't get to his touchdown career high. He's played in 15 games once or twice before, so I guess this would be game 16, but who really cares about that these days? So I couldn't find any rhyme or reason for him to be out there. So my thought is he must not be that injured, because otherwise, why not just put Carter in there to be active anyway? So we're going to have DJ Dallas kind of serving as the third back, and then Benson, the rookie, should get some work today. But that was a spot that seemed like it would be a fun play going with Carter, but he's completely out of the picture. And I went to look at finding the NFL rules officially on how the practice squad works proved to be quite challenging because most of the articles out there were recycling the same canned comment that says teams have, as long as they add somebody prior to inactives, they can bring in somebody from the practice squad. I know that can't be right because there's this whole thing about elevating it. So I found one article finally that said you got to say what you're going to do by 4 o'clock the day before. Because I was thinking, oh my God, is there a chance somehow that Carter could just be this is some sort of gamesmanship? But no, it's not. And Rappaport reported it, but I have to double check his work sometimes. So this was one of them. So there should not be any chicanery, skullduggery, or shenanigans.
Yeah, so I also don't know how some of the intricacies of things like the practice squad work. So we've got EMAC doing the groundwork to find out that most other people don't know either.
It's crazy. You can now have an international player. You need to have at least 10 players that are first or second year players, and the other 6 you can do what you want with. If somebody's been activated 3 times, you have to call them up to your squad or cut them outright. And once somebody gets activated, they get 3 game checks. Is the other thing I saw. So that's what I learned this morning, wasting far too much time on it. Let's stop wasting your time. Let's get into the fun. Starting off the quarterback here, got some good choices, Greg. We have Herbert is always solid, a little short on optimal pass catchers, but he is someone that has been threading the needle nicely for most of the year. He's going to have Will Dissly back, so that is helpful for him. We've got Drake May, who's been doing a few things on the ground with his legs behind that awful yet kind of improving New England offensive line. You've got Burrow and another rookie, Mims, going against each other, and then you've got tonight you've got Murray, who is led the Cardinals to just 1 playoff appearance in his tenure. They're out, and you've got Matt Stafford, who has not been getting a lot done, does nothing with his legs, but he has 4 multi-touchdown games, I think, in his last 7, and 2 of them were 4 touchdown games. So we got a lot to like here. How are you starting teams off as you're looking at the cornerstone position here of quarterback?
Yeah, so if I go ahead and look at, a couple things to talk about here. First is that the DraftKings slate pretty different from the FanDuel slate in terms of when I run lineups through the Sims for DraftKings, I get super, super heavily stacked lineups now. And yesterday, when Lofty and I were building lineups, that wasn't really the case, but it was because we had really cheap running backs to go to. Now that that is out of the equation, especially on the DraftKings side, what ends up happening is now for the Sims to find lineups that have a lot of upside, it's super, super heavily correlated lineups. So I see a lot of my lineups are triple stacks. There's some quadruple stacks that show up here as well. And that's kind of necessary to create upside. So I know it doesn't directly answer what your question was, Emac, because you're asking who are the quarterbacks I'm building around. But I just wanted to start with that, where a lot of my lineups here, they're very heavily stacked, and that's where I'm finding the most upside. Now,
I was...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was able to catch a few minutes of the show you did yesterday with Lofty, and it just happened to be that the Saturday slate portion there. And I found it kind of interesting that you guys were trying to figure out, is there any triple stacks there? Why is this doing it? So it's very interesting. If you've got the Sims, which is something that we're finding more and more helpful, and it's dispelling a lot of the different, what we used to think of as tried and true rules around DFS, it's really been a game changer. So you can see that's what producer Mike is sharing on the screen here. We've got the Sims for all the main sports. We got them for the showdown slates as well. And so it's a good time out there. If you guys have not yet signed up, you can you missed some really good deals over the holidays if you haven't signed up yet. But we do have our link join deal. So if you come in through the link there, you'll see 11 different sites between sportsbooks and DFS sites that we have. If you have not signed up with one of those yet, go to that landing page and read the instructions, go through our link. It'll tell you if you need to deposit $5 or $100, if you need to do, a wager or a pick'em card, and what you need to do to secure your first wager. But you got to come in through our link, number 1, to follow the instructions. And then 3, when your first bet card or pick'em card is settled, you need to send us a screenshot of your welcome email and that settled card, and we will get you 1 month of Stokastic's Sims for your choice of whatever sport you want. So we still have a month worth of NFL because we're going to go through the Super Bowl here. Of course, NBA is in full swing as well. And you can stack these, right? You could go multiple months on NBA if you want. If you have 2 of these, you can do 1 month of NBA, you can do 1 month of Sims, but it's important to send all that information. And this is on the landing page telling you all about it, but to support@stokastic.com and indicate which sport you want. And then News God, I'll get you set up there on the backside. All right, so back to our quarterbacks here. So it looks like there's correlation here, which would be even with our there are correlations we can look to with Drake May, right? You've got Hunter Henry in a remember me spot. We're obvious Lad McConkey is going to be the Herbert. Nix has Sutton. You've got a pair of stellar pass catchers there in Cincinnati for Burrow. You've got Jamar Chase has a chance to win the receiving triple crown. He would be the 5th receiver to ever do that, lead the league in catches. touchdowns and yards. He'd be the fifth person to do it since the AFL NFL merger. I think I'm probably the only one alive that was around for that merger, and I believe that happened the year I was born, if I remember correctly. It was a while ago.
The NFL was around then?
Well, me and Moses, there were 15 commandments. 5 of them kind of went towards the NFL. We couldn't agree on the practice squad, though, and the third quarterback rule. But that was we helped merge the leagues.
There we go. And then on the 7th day, EMAC rested.
Yes. Yeah. No, I watched the Super Bowl. Yes. Technically Super Bowl 0, because that's how we rolled back then. So who's leading the charge here for your quarterbacks as you're running the Sims now, and you have that information at your disposal?
All right, so two different guys that show up most predominantly for me, and then ultimately I don't have any. It's not like there's one quarterback I have 40 or 50% of or anything like that. But the two I have the most of, one of them is Matt Stafford at $5,700, and I'll start with DraftKings, and we can talk about FanDuel afterwards. But for my DraftKings quarterback exposure, it starts with Matthew Stafford, the one I get the most exposure to. Of all the teams that are playing today, there are, obviously the Bengals and the Broncos game. That game has a lot of implications. And then the Rams and the Cardinals game has a lot of implications, particularly on the Rams side of the game. And I don't think the Rams are going to let their foot off the gas at any point in this game, even if they're up, say, 28-3 in the fourth quarter. I just don't think they're going to be taking any chances. So I think this team is going to be airing it out throughout the game and doing everything they can to score as many points as possible. So I really like heavy Matt Stafford stacks. The other thing that's nice about Matthew Stafford as well, if he plays well, it means Puka Nacua likely had a good game. Cooper Kupp maybe had a good game. I know Kupp's had a little bit of down production the last couple of weeks, but we really could boil down the Rams' production on offense to Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp. So if Stafford plays well, it's kind of easy to know which are going to be the guys on the team that also play well. So if I'm going to be going to one of the more popular quarterbacks, it's Matt Stafford. The other one who shows up a good amount for me is Drake May. And this is just for ownership reasons. All of the quarterbacks have about comparable ownership today. They're all 17 to 21% owned. The one exception is Drake May, who's only 10% owned. And he just looks way under-owned in the Sims based on the fact that he's so much lower owned than the other quarterbacks. So I like him just a way to differentiate some lineups. And then Drake May also, a lot of rushing upside. He's shown to be a good fantasy asset. So popular quarterback, Matt Stafford. And then if I want to be contrarian, Drake May.
All right. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these pass catching combos, and then we'll get to the running back spot since this is a little more synergistic here. If we look at McBride, so he is the main pass catcher there for Murray. And there's been a lot of consternation, Greg, that he doesn't have a receiving touchdown this year. He recovered a fumble in the end zone for a touchdown, so he has scored. But for some reason, this has been a talking point everywhere. So quick pop quiz for you and for everybody in chat here. You guys type the answer in there. How many career touchdowns do you think he has had prior to this season? So that leaves his rookie year and his second year. Zach Ertz was of course on the team for a chunk of that. He started in 25 of those 33 games. So skipping this year, those 33 games, he had 145 targets, 110 receptions, and 1,100 yards. How many touchdowns did he have in those 33 games? I mean, it must be a lot, right? Because people are mad he doesn't have one this year.
I'm just going off memory, but I think he had 3 last year. I'll look it up, though.
You're good. He had 3 last year and he had 1 his rookie year. So he had 4 total. So what's the big deal about him not scoring a receiving touchdown, right?
Because he set a record this year.
Oh, most catches without a touchdown?
Yes, that's the reason why. It's an NFL record. Okay. That's why it's become a story. And the other thing, too, that's added on to it is that Kyler Murray now in back-to-back weeks has promised that he was going to make sure to get Trey McBride a touchdown because of that, and he wants it to go away. So obviously, if teams could just outright guarantee touchdowns, football, it would be like, what would we be doing here? If teams are just like, hey, this guy's going to score, this guy's going to score today. It's not quite that simple against other professionals, but I do think it makes the likelihood of Trey McBride scoring a touchdown go up a little bit because they're clearly drawing up design plays to try to get him that touchdown. It just hasn't happened to work out over the course of the last couple of weeks. That aside, though, you got a guy who, despite not catching a touchdown, he's got 92 receptions this year, 120 targets. He's just under 1,000 receiving yards. He's still one of the best fantasy tight ends in the league, despite the lack of touchdowns because of the catches and the receiving yards.
Yeah, his yardage total 958, that's third, and then the targets 120, the receptions 92, those are second. Here it's pretty wild. I hadn't realized it was most catches without a touch. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. In any event, he's played the same number of games this year as he has last year, and he has 14 more targets, 11 more receptions, and 133 more yards. Guy's phenomenal. The touchdowns will show up at some point. We've seen certain players just have the touchdown success. Quentin Johnston for this year. And we've seen lots of players that just never quite got there. Or then there was the curious case of, who was it? Derek Mason, who could only get like 990 yards a season, never quite get 1,000 yards in any event. All right, so that takes care of McBride. Do you like anybody else for Arizona? You've got Marvin Harrison, who has, second most targets. He has a little bit more touchdown luck, but the talent has been there. He just has really not had any consistency. And then rounding out the Murray pass catchers, you've got Michael Wilson, who has 65 targets this year, and Greg Dortch, who has 43. After that, it's just a disappearing act. Zay Jones we may see him on the screen. I don't think we'll hear his name, but he may show up for a couple of plays. But do you like anything with Harrison, Wilson, Dortch?
Just one thing I want to add really quick is the FanDuel quarterbacks come out completely different for me because of the pricing kind of being the same. The most expensive quarterback is Joe Burrow. He's 8,000. The least expensive quarterback is Drake May. He's 7,000. The pricing is also softer on FanDuel for this slate. So on DraftKings, I was getting to some of Joe Burrow, but he's not one of my two most rostered quarterbacks. He is by far my most rostered quarterback on FanDuel, and then Matthew Stafford, my second most rostered QB. And then to answer your question about who I am stacking most frequently with Kyler Murray, let's see. So Arizona pass catchers. Yeah, Trey McBride's going to be a big one, especially as a run back in those Matthew Stafford stacks. So he is the one who shows up most frequently for me. And then the secondary one, it is Marvin Harrison, who's to your point here, Emac, at $5,200, he's underpriced relative to what his talent level is and what his upside is. But yeah, he's been pretty inconsistent in his rookie season. So if I'm either making a Ram stack and looking for a run back, then it's going to be Trey McBride as the first option. Marvin Harrison is the secondary option. Same sort of deal if I'm building lineups with Kyler Murray at QB.
All right, let's stay in that same game. Let's quickly touch on the Rams. They did get Tyler Higbee back last week. Remember, he shredded his knee last year, so he has been out for the entire season. He played on 14 snaps. I want to say he had 2 or 3 targets, but you've got Hunter Long, Colby Parkinson, and Davis Allen, who all played last week as well. My guess is one of them might be inactive, probably Davis Allen. Hunter Long is the better blocker, and then Colby Parkinson is, similar to Higbee in that he can do all facets of the game. So we could see Allen sit on that one. But everything has gone through Puka Nacua. He is just out of control. Full PPR, he has 17.3 or more fantasy points in 7 of his last 8 games. That is just a phenomenal floor, excellent upside in those as well, as we have seen. Cooper Kupp in that same time frame has been on the field 15 more snaps, but he is averaging just 5 targets per game, and he's been on a little bit of a decline there. But come on, if the attention's going to go to Puka Nacua, Kupp's going to be there, right? You just can see him sitting in the seam there and getting 7 catches for 70 yards before you know it. So I think both those guys are in play. After that, now we're looking at differentiation plays, right? Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell kind of splitting that third wide receiver role about 70-30. Obviously, they're mixing in with Puka and Kupp as well, but they have similar targets over the last month or so. So Atwell gets the kind of hey, he's on the field, he's a dynamic guy, we're going to get him the ball a couple times. And then you've got wind sprinter extraordinaire Demarcus Robinson out there, enough of the snaps that he's going to get a couple targets every game as well. Jordan Whittington, He's going to be active because he's their main kick returner, but I don't know that we'll see much of him on offense. And then one of Xavier Smith or Tyler Johnson is going to be inactive. So it's really a top-heavy two-man show there. Is there any value for differentiation, for differentiation purposes for Atwell or to Marcus Robinson on our three-gamer here, Greg?
No, not really looking through my lineups, not guys that I'm getting to. And same goes for Tyler Higbee at tight end, who kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into the secondary receiving options for the Rams, because Higbee's going to be out there and play 20-ish snaps or so, but he's still working his way back from that knee injury. So what ends up happening here with Tyler Higbee is that he plays just enough to take away from some of the other guys, but his upside is very, very limited because, like you said, he only had 14 snaps that he played last week, EMAC. So now, even if we're going to expect a little bit of a bump up, we're maybe getting 2-3 targets on 20 snaps, something like that is probably the most likely outcome here. And with that being said, what can you expect from a guy who's playing such a limited amount of the game? It's not something we usually look at too much for NFL, but it becomes relevant when guys are coming back from injuries. But it's kind of like an NBA situation. It's like, hey, this guy's coming off the bench and only going to play 18 minutes. You can only be expected to score so many fantasy points. If he scores a long touchdown or something, so be it. But I'd rather go other places. And then as far as the other guys you had asked me about, Robinson or Tutu Atwell, there's some other cheap wide receivers I like and some that aren't pulling that much ownership, but that's not the direction I'm going to.
All right. Moving into our middle game here, we hit on Jamar Chase, but we've also got Mike Gesicki floating around there. We have T. Higgins, of course. What are you thinking here for the Bengals? You've got Yoshibas. There's a guy who gets touchdown variants on his side. Not quite like Nick Westbrook, but pretty close here. He's got like 40 catches and 6 or 7 touchdowns. That's pretty crazy. What do you like from the Bengals here? Because they need to win this week. They need to win next week, and they need help to make the playoffs. But they're going against the Broncos, who, if they win, they actually clinch their spot into the playoffs here. So high leverage game here for Saturday.
Yeah, and then ultimately what I think is probably going to end up happening is, regardless of whether the Bengals win or lose this week, they would still need a win next week and the Broncos to lose.
Correct.
Like you had mentioned. Have you looked at who the Broncos play next week?
I have not.
It is the Kansas City Chiefs, who have nothing to play for. So it is going to be the Chiefs backups next week. So it seems like the Broncos are going to get in no matter what, because I can't imagine that the Chiefs have multiple weeks with nothing to play for now. They don't have anything to play for until the playoffs now at this point. So I don't think we're going to see the Chiefs play their starter. So on paper, this game means a lot. I mean, ultimately it does, but I don't think it's going to matter at the end when everything's wrapped up. If the Broncos win, they're in. If the Broncos lose, that's something they beat the Chiefs backups next week. Anyway, you would ask me what is of interest to me from the Bengals. We do have a little bit of a decision point at pay up wide receiver between Puka Nacua and Jamar Chase. I prefer Puka, especially so on DraftKings, and it's just because the pricing is so tight on the DK side of things. The $400 in salary saving, it makes a pretty big difference and has me leaning towards Puka Nacua. Over on FanDuel, I'm a little more evenly split between the two because the pricing is so soft on FanDuel. I mean, J.K. Dobbins is the flat min 4K over there. So I do prefer Puka Nacua to Jamar Chase, but the salary savings, they're a lot more impactful on DraftKings. They are on FanDuel. FanDuel more of a split for me between the two.
All right. And then looking to the other side, Sutton seems to be the primary target, and then it is a cast of thousands when it comes to the pass catchers here for the Broncos. We've seen Marvin Mims have some moments. I did like the over on his. I can't remember if it's 20. I bet I laddered him up to 99 yards. But I think it was 28 and 43 were his two closest to even money on there. So I like that one. You've got Franklin in there, college teammate, of course, of Nick's. And then you've got tight ends that are just nominal at best. Troutman, of course. You've got little Jordan Humphrey floating around there. Oh, and then Vele. What's up with Vele? Is he our hidden candidate here for the Broncos?
Probably not. Let me see though. I have somebody who I like from the Broncos to be overweight to the field too, but I mean, I have 10% of Vele, so that's like kind of in line with the field, but I'd rather roster Marvin Mims. And he's modestly more popular than Vele, but I mean, we're looking at 3 game slate. Vele 10% owned, Marvin Mims 15%. So it's not like there's a massive gap between the two and what their projected ownership is. And I think that there's a lot more reason to be interested in the Marvin Mims side, who's been getting some downfield targets and then also has been drawing targets pretty regularly the last 4 weeks now. We saw him get 5 targets last week against the Chargers, 4 targets, 5 targets. He's a big play threat. He had a 37-yard touchdown reception against the Falcons. He had a 93-yard touchdown reception against the Cleveland Browns. So between Vele and Marvin Mims, if I'm looking to be contrarian and save salary, I prefer the Mims side.
All right. Now we're into the ugly spot, the first game here. Rounding it out, we got Hunter Henry in the mix for a remember me touchdown. Okay, I can get behind that. Who the hell else do you prioritize for the Patriots? And it can't be whoever is open, because Drake May is going to take care of that part of the equation for us. But who do you like before the game starts?
Yeah, so I'm over, just because I'm overweight to Drake May and he's really contrarian. I'm actually overweight to a lot of pass catchers from the Patriots. I'm overweight to Butte. I'm overweight to Demario Douglas. I'm overweight to Kendrick Bourne. I'm overweight to Hunter Henry. Overall, the one I have the most of is Hunter Henry. A lot of it has to do with the positionality, where he's a tight end. He's $4,200. He's going to be getting red zone looks, assuming the Patriots get into the red zone, which who knows, maybe that doesn't end up happening. But if I'm paying up at tight end, Trey McBride's clearly the guy. He's the only pay up tight end on the slate. But if I'm going cheaper at tight end, Hunter Henry is the one who stands out the most to me. I also have a good amount of double tight end lineups. But anyway, yeah, I'm overweight to a lot of the Patriots pass catchers. Favorite one overall for me is Hunter Henry. If I was going to be going cheap at wide receiver, Butte, who's also same ownership as Marvin Mims, right around 15%. And I'm about double the field on Butte. So I think that he looks like a really solid option. And then also, we're at a point in the season, you have to assume the Patriots are going to prioritize getting the younger pass catchers involved more, like Butte. We saw them say this, what was it, like 2 months ago or something like that? They said, time to focus on the young guys. They actually, Kendrick Bourne was a healthy DNP where he just stood on the sidelines and never entered the game. And you had to figure going forward after that, all right, it's going to be time for guys like Jalen Polk. It's going to be time for guys like Keyshawn Butte. And then just the next week, Bourne, I think, led the team in targets. But still, a couple weeks left in the season now. I think they do want to get more looks to the younger guys. Butte is the one who I want to get to the most of as far as wide receivers are concerned for the Patriots.
All right, and that leaves us winding things up with Ladd McConkey and the scrubs. Well, we can't say Johnston is a scrub because he's getting touchdowns, but he's lucking out. Is there anything after that? And where is Josh Palmer?
One thing I want to add too, just because people bring it up in the chat about Antonio Gibson is expected to start at running back today for the Patriots. Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't matter. Do you remember earlier in the year, we also had a start from Antonio Gibson? And here's what came of that start. Gibson got the very first carry of the game. He subbed out. Ramondre Stevenson came in, and then Stevenson just played most of the rest of the game. And the final stat lines for that game, Stevenson finished with 12 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown, also had 4 receptions in that game, whereas Antonio Gibson had 1 reception and had 6 carries. I don't know it's going to play out the exact same way. And relative to price tag, so I'm picking one of them, I'll say I prefer Antonio Gibson. But I'm not super confident that him starting means that all of a sudden he gets some big workload and Stevenson gets left in the dust. Because once again, the last time that Gibson started and Stevenson was the backup, Stevenson had more than twice as many touches. So it's hard to know what to make of that. Do you have any stronger opinion on that kind of scenario?
No, and a lot of people are talking about, rightfully so, the 7 fumbles that Stevenson has had, and then it's like, well, but guys, remember what happened, is to your point in the last one. But Gibson, when he was with Washington and was their lead back, they were talking about making him a kick returner. He had disappointed them so severely in his last 2 seasons there. They were doing whatever they could to not play him. So that's the guy we want to pin our hopes and dreams on. I think it's going to still be a 50-50 type approach, a hot hand type approach. I did take the overs on receptions for Ramondre Stevens and also on his rushing yards. I believe it was two and a half receptions or 3.5, and then I think it was 40, around 40 yards. Those popped up for me on OddsShopper using this portfolio EV tool. It's really cool, Greg. I hear you've been using it just to touch yourself.
Yeah, people could go follow the Twitter threads that I've been doing. By the way, also we had a super chat there. You didn't
Oh,
see that one from earlier. But yeah, I've been doing threads for Portfolio EV where I just post a handful of the bets from the tools that I'm also betting for myself, and did it starting with a $100 bankroll, which is now right around $700, just tailing the bets, and did it starting at the beginning of the NBA season. And then we'll see how high I could run that bankroll up by the end of the year. Now, also, I'm going to be giving away all of the profits from the bankroll at the start of the new year. So if you guys want to potentially just get some money for free, go check out my Twitter account and some of the threads I do. And I'll be announcing in a couple of days how I'm going to be running that giveaway. But yeah, these are tools that have really simplified betting for me and make it a way where I could be profitable without doing a lot of the legwork by myself. I don't have to be doing a lot of the research. I just kind of look in the tools, see what the tools say projects well, go bet it. And it's been working out.
all righty. Lucas Smith with the super chat here. This is for his fantasy championship. So good luck to you in this one, Lucas. He is asking, does he go with Ladd McConkey or does he go with Reed in the championship? So Reed playing in Minnesota. We get a dome environment there. We've got Ladd, who is just the main pass catcher for the Chargers. Of course, that's an outdoor game. I would still lean towards Ladd only because he's competing with far less pass catchers from his own team. Well, as many pass catchers, but the talent far less than what Reed has to deal with. Do you have a different answer for that?
First off, I could see why his team made the championship. If you're trying to figure out whether you were sitting Ladd McConkey or Jaden Reed, sounds like you were a pretty good team. So let's see our projections because I haven't looked that far ahead to this weekend. We also don't know the scoring settings of his league. So that's also something that could
Let's assume full PPR unless he's living in the Stone Age. I finally got my 20-year league to go to half PPR this year for the first time.
So based on our projections, the answer is so clearly Ladd McConkey. We have Ladd McConkey projected for 6.5 more fantasy points than Jaden Reed, nearly double the projection. So just based on that, the answer is pretty clearly Ladd McConkey.
Yes, but always worth the question. Always worth the question. And thank you for the super chat. Do you want to hit the running games real quick here, and then we can do one last spin through the Sims?
Yeah. We could do whatever you want, Emac.
Well, that sounds good. Except my boss will tell me what I want to do. When he wants my opinion, he will give it to me. So, running backs, looks like Chase Brown is topping the scales here. He is getting a workload unlike any other that we have seen in quite some time. Truly impressive. The team needs to win out. I suspect he will continue to get the rock frequently. You have Kyron Williams up next. He's getting the rock a ton himself, but not many receptions. Not many receptions. Because, of course, he has Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp as teammates. When they were out, he was getting some more short game work there, or short passing opportunities. But he's going to be pushing it to see 3 targets today. That makes it a little tough to like him, but he has just been scoring touchdowns like it's his job because, literally it is his job. So those are kind of your top 2 guys. J.K. Dobbins is back, as we mentioned on FanDuel. Somehow he's sitting at the minimum. He's 20 on Yahoo, and then I don't know that underpriced is the right word on DraftKings because we don't know what his full workload is going to be. He was on the injured reserve with a knee issue. We should assume he gets a decent workload, like maybe 12 carries and 3 or 4 targets, maybe. But remember, even when he was healthy, he wasn't getting a lot of targets because there really haven't been a lot of targets to go around there with the Chargers. And it's none really to the backfield. So it's hard to we want to be excited about him, but it's hard to be overly enthralled. And then we have the what the heck is going on with James Conner situation. So where are you on the running backs here? I think it's the top 2 are pretty clear with Williams and with Brown. But after that, you can make cases for and against everybody.
Yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins is so tricky to me. On FanDuel, you just roll with him at 4K at the min price, I think, and you just whatever happens because he's so underpriced at 4K. On DraftKings at $5,800, I'm currently overweight to the field on him, and clearly the matchup is great against the New England Patriots, but it really scares me because this is a game that the Chargers should be able to win pretty comfortably. And how much do you want to work J.K. Dobbins when he's been banged up historically throughout his career? He started the season off really well, but then he's been banged up again as of late. So J.K. Dobbins, relative to price, projects as the best overall running back on both sites, especially on FanDuel once again. On DraftKings, even though I'm overweight to the field to him, I'm very nervous about it, Emac, because it wouldn't be the most surprising thing if the game plays out and J.K. Dobbins just gets 7, 8, 9 carries or something like that. And it's just, hey, let's keep him busy, make sure he's in shape for the postseason. But I'm sure they don't want him to get injured at this point in the year.
Yeah, I've had a moment of hesitation, and I have taken him out of my full week Yahoo lineups. I thought it was a slam dunk, but as I start to look at it, it's like the receptions aren't really there for him. It's half PPR there. So, again, that's a different conversation on FanDuel where he's to just lock him in price, but it's the upside makes me a little bit worried because this is either going to be one of two things: a Chargers runaway or some sort of rock fight slog fest that the Patriots somehow managed to slow things down. But I don't think that really plays into the favor of Dobbins either. So that makes it a little tougher. How much are you ending up with Connor in your lineup?
Yeah, Connor's another one who it's sort of similar to the J.K. Dobbins situation. The difference, though, is that J.K. Dobbins is $1,600 less expensive. So I am not really willing to take many shots on James Conner. He's in a couple of game stacks for me, but I'm underweight to the field to him. He is still the 4th most popular running back on the slate. And of all the ones who are more than 20% owned, I'd rather roster Chase Brown. I'd rather roster Kyron Williams. I'd rather roster J.K. Dobbins. Because Connor, not only do you have the concerns about what is the reasoning while he's been banged up to give him a full workload today, but then he's also the same price point as Kyron Williams as Chase Brown. We don't get the couple $1,000s in salary savings that comes with J.K. Dobbins.
So here's an interesting thing. For the entire season, there have been 48 targets to the running backs for the Chargers. 48. That's like 3 per game to the position, 3.3 per game. Yes, Dobbins has 34 of those 48, and he's been out for the last month, but still, he has half his games are 2 or fewer. That's not the volume I was thinking. So that's really what made me shy away from it ultimately. So sometimes we get, 16 weeks is forever in the NFL. How many teams have been amazing, horrible, and then are clawing their way back again, or horrible, amazing, and then die on the vine, right? Every year, weird stuff happens because the NFL seasons are so long and the attrition rate is so high. But that's what ultimately has me off him. And I will be below the field, I think, on DraftKings. I'm building out my Sims right now. Good times. Still a couple free money lineups out there. Team free money, EMAC in $1 head-to-heads in the DK lobby for all 3 single game slates, as well as there's 3 left for the main slate for Saturday. Come take my money. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Who are you most terrified of not having enough representation in your portfolio? Which player is going to ruin your day potentially, Greg?
Oh man, it could be so many guys on a 3-game NFL slate. How many times or especially showdown slates, how many times does it start? And then I know your question was which player specifically is it that I would be identifying here, but how often does it happen on 1, 2, 3-game NFL slates where some rando 2% owned guy scores a 60-yard touchdown 3 plays into the game? You look like, oh, this guy's 2% owned, so he's not going to affect min cash if you're going to need him to win a GPP. Idiots scoring touchdowns I don't have. That's always a concern for small slates. All right, let's see.
It's our own version of the Mandela effect, right? It's the collective memory. It's like the Thanksgiving games, right? The Leon Lett game, right? The fill in the blank, the Tyler Blah or different Detroit people just ruining your days. That's what 3-game slates can do. You can just throughout the history of these, there's a couple performances you could just say, like, wasn't Kamara on a short slate when he had 6 touchdowns or whatever, right? It's one of those where it's just like that game and you don't know who it's going to come from. It's pretty crazy.
All right, so a couple of spots here. One of the spots that I'm very heavily underweight to on the slate, the Chargers defense is projected to be here's the ownership for defenses on the slate. It's every team is 11 to 16% owned on defense, and the Chargers are almost 30% owned. So with the way the defense, the projection for the defense also, it's nearly identical across the board. That's kind of how it always works with the position. But just because the Chargers defense is so popular and the other defenses are not popular, the Sims get me way underweight to the Chargers defense, and I just play other defenses in their place. So if the Chargers go out and score a defensive touchdown at $3,400, that's probably something that would be pretty killing to me, unless just one of the couple of Chargers lineups that I have with them at defense ended up coming through. So Chargers defense, that would be one spot. Another one for me, if I'm looking at skill position players, Cortland Sutton is projected for mid 30% ownership, and I only have around 20% of him. So if Cortland Sutton had a big game at $6,300, that also wouldn't be ideal for me. The way I'm looking at my wide receiver exposures, I'm either going all the way up to the Jamar Chase and Puka Nakuas, with Puka being the preferred option for me, or I'm going cheap and I'm mixing in some of the lower owned guys like Kayshon Boutte or Marvin Mims. So the mid range for me, not something I get a ton of exposure to. So if somebody like Cortland Sutton at a very, very popular projected ownership was to go off, that wouldn't be great for me either.
All right. Well, those happen to be my two of my cash game plays, so I guess I will have that going for me. But it looks like I'm shaping up to have. Funny that we're both using the Sims here and having a similar adjustment here. Are you playing any in that the $300,000 to first contest?
I just played some of the lower dollar stuff. I don't really love 2 and 3 game NFL slates, but when I do these shows, I feel obligated to throw lineups in. So I'm doing some like the $3.20 max and things along those lines.
All right. Any wagers out there that you were looking at here? I mentioned I liked some of the overs there on Ramondre Stevenson. I'm hoping it's a split backfield hot hand situation. I laddered Marvin Mims all the way up to 100 receiving yards. That's a little bit of a stretch. When we say ladder, you kind of like it's, I'm not a big bank Hank guy. So it's like $20 on his lowest one, then 15, then 10, then 5, then, like $3 to get 28 to 1 that he gets 100 yards. So that's, as you climb the ladder, you pay off the ones that you don't get to. But if you get all of them, it's a good day. It was a good day last night, 1,700 to 1. So 17.5 to 1 on 3 made 3-pointers by Evan Mobley. Got that one. Shout out to your buddy and mine, Eric Lindquist, who called that one out. But that's the laddering effect.
Let's see. So looking at the projections we have in OddsShopper, one bet that's rating out well for today is Estime for over 20.5 rushing yards. Fairly low number there, but that's one that is standing out for football. A lot of the other football bets are for tomorrow. Yeah, I'll just say Estime over 20.5 receiving yards, over 20.5 rushing yards if I have to pick one.
Yep, that was one I wagered as well. And then I went to 34.5 because I think it was 2.2x. So 4 running backs going to be active there in Denver. We didn't really hit on that precisely, but Estime getting a look. I'm blanking on that. No, is it Blake Watson? Somebody there, who's their bad host by me digging that deep and not knowing where I'm going. But they have a 4th running back that has entered the mix here. You've got Javonte Williams, who's getting about half of the snaps. Jaleel McLaughlin is coming back. He's getting a few carries, a few snaps, but it just seems like the running back has been a hated position there for Denver. So it's not quite the smash one would think there with Estimate, but come on, 20 yards. 20 yards feels like it's totally doable. It would be Blake Watson. It's the guy I was trying to remember. All right. Wow, we got through a lot of information here. Let's look at chat and see what they got here. Coming in for us. Estimate will win the slate, says Mike Schreiber. All right. All right. Gibson, yes, Gibson is the starting, but again, Greg broke that one down nicely last time we saw it happen, which doesn't mean that's going to happen today. It ended up being Stevenson with one of his best games, right? It's a hot hand situation would be my guess. But Butterfingers is in play with that hot hand, right? Melted Butters and 7 fumbles. That would be Ramondre Stevenson. What else we have? People asking, what do you think of how healthy is T. Higgins in your estimation?
How the hell would I know?
kind of the use.
So honestly, how
he's
healthy
more
is
than a
anybody?
decoy, right?
How healthy is anybody at this point in the season?
Well, but T. Higgins has a special place in our heart for having just screwed us on these primetime slates.
I assume that he's healthy. I assume he's as healthy as he's been all year. He's been hurt since game 1 of the season. I don't think he's been healthy at all the entire year.
Yeah, I concur. Risky, but whatevs. Let's see what my Sims are giving me. Do you set uniques when you're doing these, Greg, for the Sims?
No, I don't use uniques. I don't really care to make my lineup super diversified. I know there's a lot of people who feel like they don't want to be too heavily invested in one spot, or they want to really spread out their exposures to mitigate risk. I just want to get as much exposure to the best players and the best lineups I could build as possible. I view all of the slates as they're different entities in terms, like today's slate, tomorrow's slate. They're all going to be that's how I diversify. I play multiple slates. I don't have to play a lineup that's significantly worse just for the purpose of it being a different lineup than another one that I've already played. That's at least how I approach it.
All right, that seems pretty fair. It's funny the different ways you can put your you can really let your biases get you, and that's a dangerous thing here. And that's where when you start using the uniques and then start capping players and then start boosting it, you're doing a lot of different things here. You may lose track of what you're attempting to do because some of those things are magnifying each other. They're building on themselves, and you can have unintended consequences there, which is why I love the Sims for everything but main slate or multi-game NFL. I had a really good 2-gamer on Christmas, but I usually like to stick to showdowns, and I'm now playing like 7 or 8 showdowns on the main slate with the Sims tool because I like it that much for that. So I've been having some reasonable ROI success. So just saying, these tools are quite diverse and they're very powerful, and you can use them in a variety of ways that can help you make some money. Let's adjust my exposures here. Ooh, how do I pick? I'm playing 2 in the $1 million or in the $300,000 contest, Greg. What is the best way to pick the 2 lineups I should put in there? Should I just take the top 2 ROI? Is that how you would go about doing this?
Repeat the question again. I didn't totally follow.
I am playing 100 lineups, but 2 of these are going into that $20 DraftKings $350,000 to first contest.
Oh yeah, I would play the top 2 lineups by sim ROI in that
Okay.
instance.
All right, and while there is some overlap, it looks like it looks almost like a 4v4 between those, so I can live with that. All right, let me get my lineups uploaded here. We shall have some fun. Who gets rich today?
Who gets rich today? Hopefully me, hopefully you, hopefully a couple of people in the YouTube chat.
The person in California who won the $1.1 billion lotto. Shout out to them.
I didn't even know about that. But yeah, that guy too.
Could be a lady. My wife makes us play when it gets up to that high. We get 2 tickets, because chip in a chair. All right, 9 minutes to go here. This is good. This is good. Higgins not healthy. Okay, that's fine.
By the way, just because people keep mentioning in chat, Gibson was expected to start today, and the last time that he started, Stevenson got about a little more than twice as many touches. So it could matter. It also might not matter, but it's not something that because I messaged the data team too. It was not something that they felt that who is starting was meaningful to the projections or anything.
I'm going 96% Chase Brown. That feels a lot, Greg.
I have a lot of Chase Brown as well. I have about 90% of him. He's my most roster player on the slate by a pretty wide margin.
All right. Kyron Williams, 87%. Basically, I'm playing 2 running backs today. So
I mean, they're definitely the 2 players I think to feel the best about. Where I'm getting contrarian is with some of my wide receivers. I've got some lower owned wide receivers like the ones we mentioned before, Butte, Marvin Mims. But yeah, running back, I'm not doing anything too crazy at running back.
All right. The defenses, I'm pretty spread out. I've got 5 of at least 15%, 15 to 20%. Tight ends, I'm playing about 6 tight ends, but 69% McBride, 39% Hunter Henry. Wide receivers, boatload of Puka Nacua, 80% Puka Nacua. So basically, I'm rooting for the Rams tonight. That's an emotional hedge against my Seahawks, Greg, who have a 12% chance to make the postseason at this point if they win out and get help. I know some people have some Seahawk playoff tickets out there in the betting streets. Let's see, 7 more minutes. Anybody getting DeValey? I thought I would, not the way it's shaping out here. I'm going super duper heavy in a few spots. That was also something I'm a little bit surprised with, but I did hit a few buttons on the Sims that ended up taking me to that particular route. I am comfortable with it. It is a 3-game slate. I've learned to kind of treat these closer to showdown in that embrace the chaos, right? Make some stands if you feel good about making stands. This seems to be the case today. I ended up picking 3 of the chalky players, but I went even heavier on them. That's something I don't usually do either, but here we are today going down that particular path. Will it work out? We will find out in about 10 hours. Be a good time. 5 minutes till lock. Is Will Dissly in play? Yes, I ended up putting him in my showdown lineup there for this game. He's not in my main slates, but again, I said I'm playing a boatload of McBride. I don't have very many 2 tight end sets because I went with some of the Patriots receivers to get some cheap guys. Is Connor a trap play? I believe he is. But if you think that, then it's going to be Benson, who's going to be the other back, right? So they only have 2, right? Plus DJ Dallas.
If Connor was contrarian, I would feel better about him as a GPP play. But he has all this uncertainty about him, and he's popular.
Yeah. Where did I end up with him? I have him on 1% of my lineups. There we go. 5 minutes to go. We do have NBA Live before lock tonight at 6 o'clock. It's a 7-game slate. Should be a lot of fun. There are shenanigans going on already in the NBA. There's enough injuries out there and teams on back-to-back that we'll probably see even more news. Is Michael Carter playing? He is not active. He was not elevated from the practice squad. So for all the rules we can see, plus with the talking head punditry mentioning it on Twitter, he is not eligible to play tonight. I thought there might be some loophole, but it does not look to be the case. Let's see. Oh, Scion won. Connor or Dobbins for your championship game. I would probably go with Dobbins. What a heartbreaker. What a heartbreaker, because Connor was healthy. We've seen what he's done all season. Thoughts on Benson for a GPP? I think he's totally fine. But remember, this team's probably going to end up passing more as they try to play spoiler against the Rams. What do we think Dobbins' workload is going to be? I would say 12 carries and a target and a half. That would be my guess. What do we have him here at? Stokastic. Get up to that. We have Dobbins for 15 carries and 67 yards. We have him for 3 targets and 2.6 catches, a little more robust than what I would go with. But that also assumes a closer game. He's going to be in mothballs if the Chargers can put some points up in New England today. 2-minute warning. Jalen Polk, yeah, lost season for one of my favorite Huskies. Is what it is. We had him. I don't even think we had him projected for more than 2 fantasy points today. That just hasn't really worked out for him. Championship in my home league, Connor Blackshear or Kendry Miller. It's a PPR league. I would probably roll the dice with Kendry Miller. I don't know that Kamara's going to play this week, even though there are rumors about that. We could see him come back next week. He has some milestone or some reason that he may want to play. I can't remember what it is, but I don't know that we'll see him this week.
Some of these are so now that the NFL season is longer, I think the championship week should be a week earlier as well.
Well, if you were in the Stokastic Chat DGen League run by News God, our championship was last week.
I think that's the right way to do it now. There's too many teams now that just don't have anything to play for this week.
Yeah. And also did it help or hurt that there's the extra playoff spot? It's kind of, I have mixed feelings about it because each of the years it's mostly been clinched enough that at least some teams were still playing for seeding, but it was down to such a select few that were the last 2 weeks that were cemented in, or it really didn't matter too much, right? Like the Jalen Hurts, right? He probably wouldn't have cleared the concussion protocol unless, of course, they really, really needed to win this game. Now, technically, Washington can still get the division on them. It's a harder row to hoe there to get there. But if this was win, do or die, I kind of think, magically he'd get some TB12 water sprinkled on his forehead and he'd be good to go with that brain bruise.
In my ancient home league, this year we went to a 2-week championship because of that. So we now do championship in 17-16.
A 2-week championship is not a bad way to go either, because then it takes some of the flukiness out of it per se.
Yep.
You could still run into it.
Super chat, by the way.
Oh, I did not. Let's see what Melissa has to say here. Melissa says 70 lineups, only 3 running backs from the sim: Brown, Williams, and Dobbins. Is that okay? I basically have 2 running backs from the Sims, your first 2 guys on that list. So we ride. Yes, if you are willing to have high risk tolerance. I know Melissa is willing to play in that form or fashion, and she asks smart questions about it. You're getting the 2 best running backs, and you're trying to get some leverage on the field from already popular running backs. I think that's okay the way things shake out today.
Yeah, so those are the 3 that I predominantly have across 150 lineups. I have some Gibson mixed in. I have some of James Conner. Those are the secondary sort of ones to Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, and Kyren Williams. So to me, Chase Brown is clearly the best overall running back on the slate. Then J.K. Dobbins and Kyren Williams as the next tier of running backs. And then if I was looking at a third tier, that would be Gibson and Connor as guys who I don't love but are playable.
All right. I'm looking at my lineups. Half my lineups are 2 tight end, which makes sense. I wasn't calculating the math correctly. That's because 96% Brown, 87% Kyren, 15% Dobbins. And then 1% McLaughlin, 1% Connor. That's it. I'm playing 5 total running backs, and the lower 3 account for 17% of my running back spots. Oh.
And we are locked.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to see what's going to happen with Emacs NFL Slate. You guys can come see us at 6 o'clock, check in, see if there are tears coming down my face at that point, because we've got NBA live before lock, an exciting NBA slate here tonight. And it's a lengthy one. The late game is 10:30 tonight. So we got a lot of sports ahead. We've got college football bowl games going on right now. The main slate locked at noon, but there is also a 2-game later slate, plus all the showdown contests. And we've got the Sims for that and Matt Kajeski's projection. So you guys want to check that out. It's a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. Please hit that like button on the way out. You guys can follow Greg on Twitter at Ehrenberg DFS. Check him out. See how he's going to give away his $700 bankroll challenge winnings. You can find me at EMAC DFS. And of course, it is Stokastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.